Users of Reddit. What is an undeniably evil profession? Psychics. Especially every single one that's worked with police or a family looking for a missing loved one, etc. One time in a Target, a random woman came up to me and said, "You have to call me right away, I already know you need help. Here's my card, please don't wait to call." Because apparently I look like a sucker. Incredibly predatory. Houdini hated psychics with a passion. After his mother died, Arthur Conan Doyle convinced him to have a séance with his wife's friend who claimed she could talk to the dead. When the medium responded claiming to channel his mother, he was furious because she was speaking English, a language his mother did not know. He spent most of his career publicly debunking psychics. Family vloggers/influencers that exploit their children for content. Micah and James Stouffer have to be the worst offenders. Adopting a special needs child from China, against advice from doctors and agents, to literally rehoming him, their words, after gaining the majority of their popularity and hits from their adoption journey. Ryan's World is a huge offender of this. Those parents get paid fucking stacks to essentially advertise toys to kids under the guise of an ordinary kid playing with his toys. They even have a licensed video game, the kid himself is a brand. My concern is what will happen to Ryan when he's no longer a cute little kid and doesn't want to play with toys anymore? Either they set aside a huge college fund for him, or my fear, they'll just stop giving him all that attention and he'll end up very dysfunctional, realizing his whole life was just a means to make money. I feel like human resources can be extremely evil, depending on the organization. I have been working in HR for a while, for different companies, and some of them have your HR staff doing some unimaginable levels of gaslighting. You fire an employee with reason that you dug up a long time ago? It's legitimate underperformance and can warrant termination if you give them at least one counseling to make them believe they're not doing the job correctly. Didn't last here very long, I don't even put them on the resume. I was not the victim, nor the person being used to terminate the perfectly fine employee, either. Payday loan provider. My father-in-law works for one, just a regular employee, and it's sad that he actually thinks he is helping these people. I tried to explain why it's so bad, but all he sees is the people being able to come in and get money to buy food for their kids, obviously a lot of recurring customers. He is also terrible with money, so I see why he doesn't get it. When my wife and I were first married, he told me he had $25,000 saved for retirement and he thought he could retire in a few years on that. Obvious answer, but human traffickers. I was gonna say hitman, but then I thought at least there's a certainty to it. Either the job gets done and the person dies, or it doesn't and the person lives. There's an end to it. Human trafficker though, you deceive and then pass terrified, overwhelmed, powerless people off into a nightmare ether where anything could happen to them. But it's always going to be bad and scarring if not fatal. And unless they get away or get saved, that's just their life from then on. The people that work for National Debt Relief. They trick vulnerable people who would do anything to get rid of their credit card debt into worsening their credit and accumulating even more debt. Absolutely evil. I had no idea WTF this even way. Looked into it, what the fuck? How is this even legal? If they refuse to settle with them, you are now on the hook for your debt, late fees, and destroyed credit. Look at this shit, bold mine. Do you offer a money-back guarantee? Yes. We offer a money-back guarantee because we want satisfied customers. Our guarantee, by joining our program, you will be on your way to reducing your debts. We are so confident in our professionalism, level of service and ability to get results, that we do not charge a single penny in fees until your debt is settled. Not a single penny. If we are unable to settle your debt, or if you are unsatisfied for any reason up to the point of us settling your debts, you can cancel anytime without any penalties or fees. If we are not able to settle any of your accounts, you don't pay us. It is that simple. We get results or you don't pay. We call that our 100% satisfaction guarantee. No shit. It's straight against the law. The Federal Trade Commission made it illegal to collect before settlement back in 2010. Predatory towing. I still have a boiling hatred for the towing company that would troll my old apartment complex and steal people's cars, and I will die on the hill that is what they were doing, stealing poor people's cars. They tried to gank my car the day I brought it home because it was covered in patina and looked abandoned to any Karen that doesn't know any better. Ran fine, paperwork up to date, just had bad paint. I had narrowly avoided having it taken because I was in the right place at the right time. After that I would steal their aluminum signs they had posted at my complex every time they replaced them. Bonus points because my job at the time made those things. I still have 3 as trophies. Fuck them. Also, not a profession, but the scumbags who targets the elderly, pretending to be from the bank or some other authority. Luring good-natured people and take their money. Just had some cases where they specifically went for widows 80 plus, preferable handicapped. Some of the most vulnerable people. Hope they don't sleep well at night. Tele scammers too. They're especially fond of targeting old people. In India they have whole underground workplaces dedicated to cold calling people overseas with personal info they've dug up on you to try to get your identity and siphon vulnerable people's money. They often impersonate the police or credit agencies and try to convince you that you're implicated in fraud in order to get you to tell them your sin. Also, just the regular call centers. My wife and I took care of her grandmother for several years. The old lady learned quick. She'd get one of these wankers on the phone, and hand the phone to me and say, "I got one for you, have fun." And then I'd pick one of several personae, to hassle them with. Sometimes I'd pretend I couldn't understand them, and make them keep repeating themselves. I'd hit on them. I'd ask them if this is what they wanted to do when they grew up. Lots of stuff. And Grandma loved it. She said it was great entertainment. I am surprised that no one mentioned paparazzi. They are leeches. I caught the end of a TV program following one the other day. It was his opportunity to show that paparazzi are just honest people doing a job. But no, he came across as even more unpleasant than I expected. He just couldn't help himself. Union busting. I cannot fathom what kind of person could possibly work in this industry that actively works to manipulate and terrorize hard working class folks into accepting less than acceptable working conditions just so a corporate entity can pocket the change. It is an industry literally built on the principles of gaslighting and manipulation. Health insurance adjusters. Here's an example that happens thousands of times every day. You go to the doctor's office because of some pain, abdominal, knee pain, whatever. Doctor is slightly concerned and says we should check for abnormalities and orders an MRI. You show up at the imaging place and are told insurance isn't covering it, and without insurance it's $900. Could be fucking cancer, some internal damage, but nope, insurance won't cover a simple imaging. A company with $250 billion of revenue just can't afford it, even though you are paying them precisely to do this. Who made this medical decision for you? Your doctor, who went through 4 years of medical education and several more of residency, who knows your medical history. Nope. This pencil pusher at their fucking desk made it, based on how much you are likely going to cost for their company. So, unless you're decently wealthy or just desperate, you don't get to know what's causing your pain because an insurance adjuster thinks you should take an aspirin instead and see how that works because it's cheaper. They are incentivized to not pay for your medical care. Most companies will suffer from making shitty products or providing poor services, but insurance companies will profit from going against your interests, breaking their own rules and hoping you don't call them out or litigate. Car insurance is better because at least if other drivers are at fault, incentives are aligned and they will fight for you. But to health insurers, your body is always the enemy. It's absolutely insane to me how this is allowed in this day and age. Opioid dealers. I'm talking cartels and pharmaceutical companies. Why? What do you mean why? Their profits go up when addiction does. The more lives they destroy, the more money they make. Before my friend went to rehab and got clean, he told me about how he sold some pretty hard drugs for a while for a living and to also supply his own habits, and he looks back on it all the time with so much shame and guilt. He flat out said to me one day, "Man, what I did was beyond evil and cruel. Not only was I ruining my own life, but I was helping other people ruin theirs without even a thought because I didn't care about anyone or anything. All I cared about at the time were the drugs and the money." He's now a huge advocate for helping people get sober and doing what he can to help clean up the streets in our city and to also stop hard drugs from being dealt. Politics. Most politicians are literally psychopaths. To quote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, to summarize, it is a well-known fact that those people who most want to rule people are, ipso facto, those least suited to do it. To summarize the summary, anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should on no account be allowed to do the job. The Nestlé nurses. To be honest, Nestlé as a company are completely evil, but the nurses they hired took it to another level. For those who don't know, Nestlé wanted to increase their sales of baby formula, so they sent salespeople dressed as fake nurses into third world countries, very poor areas of Africa and Asia, and got them to tell mothers that breastfeeding was bad, and convinced them to buy baby formula for bottle feeding. The people they targeted could barely afford food, the formula wasn't very nutritious, and many babies died. Multi-level marketing. Not one company, the entire industry is predatory. They're all just pyramid schemes that prey on vulnerable people. This is so true. I got sucked into a company rhyming with scam bay, if you know lol. They made lofty promises and said this would change our lives forever, and they kept dissing 9-to-5 jobs all the time. The worst part is the fact that they convince you, the seller, to buy all their products because you can only advertise something that you use. I didn't realize that they were actually making revenue from the sellers themselves. Granted, their products are top-notch, but they are 2 to 2.5 times the price of what you get on Amazon. The final straw was when my upline told me to make a list of my contacts, friends, relatives, neighbors, family, friends, etc., and he started contacting them beforehand and without allowing me to ask their permission whether it was okay for me to share their number with a third person. I repeatedly told my upline that I need to ask a few of my contacts, especially women, whether it would be alright if I give my number to my upline beforehand, but my upline kept saying it's alright, it's better they don't have prior intimation beforehand for some weird reason. Needless to say, few of them were pissed that I gave their number to my upline without their permission. Lost out on a lot of friends due to this. 0 out of 10 would recommend. I cringe when I think I was associated with something so unscrupulous. People who raise animals, foxes, minks, etc., solely for fur. Fur is a luxury, not a necessity for most people. If you're one of the few people for whom it is a necessity, people living in northern Canada or Russia, mostly, you're most likely hunting anyway, so this is solely about the people who raise animals in tiny cages, skin them and throw away the rest, then sell the skins for people in countries where they definitely could do without. I heartily endorse any policy which enforces fading out this profession by disallowing new people to enter the field. I can see that stopping it completely right away would cause unemployment, etc., so this feels like an acceptable compromise. When the people already doing this retire, the business will then end naturally eventually. The funeral industry is disgusting. The entire industry is like a vulture feeding off the bereaved at their lowest. The modern-day funeral industry started when people would chase around the war, wait for corpses to pile up, then stuff them with sawdust and send them back to their loved ones so they could say goodbye. Once the war ended, they realized their source of income dried up and went town to town peddling funerals and body preservation as the only appropriate way to honor of your loved ones. Fast forward a few generations and you've got an entire industry designed to prey on people's emotions when they're at their saddest/lowest. When you've got lessons and training on how to use people's emotions against them to soak up the most money possible, it's almost impossible to convince me you're not evil. Making algorithms for targeted ads for children or political ads. Not all, but salesmen who prey on the elderly. I worked for a window company in the UK that is named after a certain mountain. Me and my workmate fitted 40 meters of guttering to an old lady's cottage, which we got paid around £60 each for 4 hours work. The piece of shit salesman blagged her out of £3,500 for the work. When I worked in beauty, I became one of the top 5% salespeople in the company working for a major brand. I did that by perfecting the ability to look at a woman, identify her insecurities and selling her expensive solutions to them while making her think I was doing her a favor. It felt repulsive. I'm so glad I'm out. SeaWorld Shamu trainers. Those wild animals deserve to be out in nature where they belong. Not trapped in a bathtub doing stunts for humans' entertainment. I saw a drone view of SeaWorld where they outlined the orca tank, where they spend their entire lives, and then outlined the parking lot. Absolutely heartbreaking. Even worse when you learn that orcas and dolphins are smart enough to understand transactions. You could literally build a seating platform at the end of a dock and train wild animals to perform a lot of the same tricks without removing them from their homes. Eviction movers. It's a new thing that's sprung up since the pandemic. Evictions never stopped here, they just had to be creative and not say it was for non-payment. They hire people off Craigslist promising ridiculous rates like $25 to $35 per hour and then have the movers go in after the sheriff tosses someone out and destroy their stuff/toss it outside. It's so low. They're being paid to ruin people's lives. We have insanely low wages plus absurdly high rent here. People couldn't afford rent working full-time before the pandemic. Being on the receiving end, I have to speak up. We decided to sell our apartment, but then the pandemic hit. My wife was like, there is no way we are going to sell and risk out tenants being put on the street during a pandemic and while they are struggling with schooling from home. So we told the tenants we would hold off until the end of the school year, which correlated with vaccines being available and everyone starting to go back to work. Yearish later, we gave everyone notice, again, that we would be selling. Set expectations that we might have to raise the rent. We were way under market. I finally got an offer from a buyer. We gave notice to one of the tenants, and we offered to pay her to move out. She didn't take the offer. Instead, she stopped paying rent altogether and avoided us. She was banking on the eviction moratorium being extended, which it was, twice. Almost lost the sale, because of her, but finally closed after several delays, caused by her. Courts gave us possession, twice. Eviction moratorium was finally lifted, and she left with 3 months unpaid. No, she did not lose her job or have any hardships. That's just what she claimed on the court filing, but then failed to show up to court, twice. We are now going after her for the unpaid rent, which court has awarded us multiplied by 3. Her paycheck will be garnished. She went from having an opportunity to be given money, getting help for moving out, and storage help, as well as assistance in finding a new place, to having to pay additional months and court fees and no help with storage, etc. because she decided we were the enemy. I'm not sure of his exact title, but my grandfather is the guy that goes to elderly couples, typically on their deathbed, to talk with them about allocating money from their will to the church instead of their families. I love him, but I think what he does now, after having been a school principal for almost 40 years, is disgusting and immoral. CEOs of non-profit organizations. It's good that they created this organization, but their salary is too high and is taken from the money that was directed to the cause. Lol, I used to be a financial manager at a non-profit. The exec director loved to criticize other CEOs or exec directors for earning so much in comparison to their employees. Fast forward a few months later, and she went from earning $80K, it was a small non-profit, and all of us earning from $50 to $65K a year to her cutting our salary and giving herself $110K a year. I quit, but I guess she loved the income so much she continued to give herself raises and is paying herself about $150K for a non-profit where 5 people work at. Money corrupts the weak. Defense contractors. How are they evil? Multiple scandals and war crimes committed in foreign land by many of these groups. If you don't think profiting off war is evil, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure this has been said, but a defense attorney. I watched one tear into my 14 and 11-year-old stepdaughters after their father had sexually assaulted them. She, the attorney, was a female, blamed them. If it was bad and you felt uncomfortable, why didn't you say no or ask him to stop? Why didn't you leave the room? While tears were running down their faces. This was 2 years ago, but it's something I will never forget. That woman sold her soul to the devil long ago. My wife is a defense attorney, and I can say with 100% certainty that she has more contempt and disdain for a good portion of her clients. She is there to make sure the system works for both sides and has actually really helped some people that the prosecutor was trying to bulldoze. Puppy mill businesses. They leave their breeding mamas in tiny cages 24/7, breed them every heat cycle, and don't take care of them when they're older and have health issues that stem from their poor care. I witnessed a puppy mill firsthand in the 90s. My dad was the investigating officer and took me along with him to help with community cleanup. It was the most horrific thing I have ever witnessed in my life. You cannot imagine the smell. It makes my heart hurt 25 plus years later to think of it. We adopted an old breeding dog, probably around 13 years old. Poor thing couldn't see, wasn't potty trained, didn't know how to react to a person trying to pet her, and she kind of just smelled like death, but I think that's an old dog thing. She lived for another 3 years before passing in her sleep, and we treated her with the life she deserved. We gave her pieces of roasted chicken when we had it, we let her sleep in the beds, and we got her hair cut every week, which the previous master didn't, and since we live on 32 acres in the middle of nowhere, we let her roam free when she wanted. It was sad that she passed, but I'm glad she did it happy.